Welcome back to episode 125 of the Disorganized Wizard Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm here as always with Adam.
Hello.
And Cam.
Hey, guys.
And we're a group of Ottawa-based players that play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Most definitely.
You almost broke there.
Almost. I had to close my eyes for a few seconds to maintain my composure. Is that like your weekly goal every time? It's to just like throw me off the intro?
It's just, I guess. I mean, Adam said hopefully. Or did you say hopefully? I wasn't listening. But that was your thing for a while.
Yeah. I switch it up. It depends on my mood.
Yeah, hopefully versus definitely. That sort of became his thing. So like I figured I needed a calling card. And why not just like change up the greeting?
Fair enough. We got a bunch to talk about this week. Last week that was, we had SCG Cleveland Modern, won by Amulet.
Mm-hmm. Just some big Titans. I played Titan in a vintage cube at a friend's place over the weekend. Maybe it was last weekend. Got it into play with a Eureka once. Got it with a Natural Order once. Could not cast my Eureka against the Metalworker deck, though.
Oh, that sucks.
Oh, dude, this is bloat of the week. Well, maybe not, but it was really annoying. So I had like Forest, Mana Dork, Mox Emerald, Natural Order in my hand. I had mulled, and like this was my hand. I'm like, well, this is insane.
Okay.
This is just a turn 2 Natural Order. Mm-hmm. And then my first draw step was Progenitus, which I have no other way of casting. And then I lost that game.
Oh, man. So, yeah, let me tell you, resolving Primeval Titan, you love it. I love it. When I started playing Magic, one of the first decks I built was green-red Kessig Wolfron Ramp.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that deck?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah.
Oh, man, that deck was sweet.
That's the one that Kilber was playing for a while, too, right? Like, pretty similar. Because there was an Ink Moth in the format.
Yeah.
You could get people with Wolfron.
Yeah.
Standard.
It's just either you kill them with your Titans or you fetch out your Kessig Wolfron and your Inkmoth Nexus and make it huge.
Yeah. That's hype.
Yeah. That deck was awesome.
That was in standard is sweet. I think that's actually like rad.
Yeah.
Because it's really powerful, but it costs 6.
The good old days of Magic.
That was the same format that had like Tempered Steel and Geist of Saint Traft. Delver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but there were answers to Delver, even though there was Mana Leak. Like,
that format was wild, man. There were so many powerful cards.
I think the standard format now, it's just that, like, we've talked about this lots, but like we were just choked out there for a few year and a half there. We were just pretty choked on options, but like, I don't know. Cam came downstairs last night. We were eating food and talking about playing Arena, and he's like, "Have you lost the Goblin Gathering deck yet?"
What?
And I was like,
In Limited.
The Goblin Gathering deck?
Yeah. So I had actually never been paired against it, but I was playing a Ravnica Allegiance.
oh, I thought you were talking about standard. I was
No.
wait, what?
No, in Limited.
Oh, okay, never mind. Isn't this cool? In my head the whole time you were talking about standard. I was like, no, what ELO are you playing at? Like in my head, I thought he was like, this deck's nuts.
That's not a real standard deck. It's more impressive to lose to that deck in Limited because it actually came together. I think they must have had like 5 or 6 copies of Goblin Gathering because they played 2 to 3 against me both games and then just kept a Burn Bright and I died.
What does that card do?
It's the one that makes 2.
The first one makes 2 goblins, the next makes 3rd, the next makes 4.
For every copy of Goblin Gathering in your graveyard, it makes an additional Gobbo.
Just one additional Gobbo?
Yeah.
Dude, that card sucks.
Right.
It's bad.
But my opponent played 3 of them and then burned bright, and I could block. I had like 4 blockers, and I still took like 21.
Yeah.
Damn.
It's pretty good. Dang, I thought you were talking about standard. I was like,
no.
Nice.
It's more annoying in Limited because like, why'd the bots give you all these cards? Why'd you start taking them?
Because Goblin Gathering's terrible.
Right, exactly. So like, at some
what do you
point,
mean? What did you start taking them? It's the 1+1 strategy.
Yeah, you're right. Goblin Gathering, Burn Bright. Yeah, it's the Slitherblade Honed Kopesh.
Yeah, dude, exactly. That thing was unstoppable.
Yeah.
How many of those
never played
did we
against it,
cast?
so.
Tons.
Oh, so many.
Of Slitherblade Honed Kopesh?
Dude.
I cast a foolish amount of those. Because I had free drafts that year, right? So that's all I did was cast those.
Yeah, Hour of Devastation Limited was sweet.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But the standard during that time... But anyway, yeah, to my point, Standard now. See, I thought you left. That's how diverse Standard is. I thought he was getting crumpled by Goblin Gathering.
And you're like, yeah, you know what? That's totally reasonable.
I mean, there are probably decks that would crumple, right? Like, what's Green Red Monster supposed to do?
Nothing. Get crumpled.
You can hit them for like 12, and then they Goblin Gathering. They like burn bright you back for like 30, and you have a blocker, maybe 2.
Yeah. Or they chain whirler you, but like,
it's not a card.
that's the risk you take. It's whatever.
Yeah.
But no, you can play like, It's awesome right now. But looking back to those formats, it's fun too. But Titan is something else, man. This Amulet Titan deck in Modern.
Yeah. I mean,
it's always the same people.
Yeah. It's just been kind of crumpling the SCG circuit for the entire year.
Yeah.
They're back to Hive Mind.
Yeah. I mean, the deck's really good. And I think it's still not played nearly as much as you would expect because of how powerful
people are just too lazy to learn it.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things is people are kind of afraid to pick it up because there's all this, talk going around, oh, this deck's really complicated, blah, 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 when like really.
You just play your cards.
Yeah.
It tells you what to do on the cards. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm supposed to untap these lands and play 2 a turn. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Get it. I flow mana in response to the trigger. Wow, so complicated.
Yeah. I mean, like, really, it's nowhere near as complicated as people kind of make it out to seem, but people love to sound smart.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
See, you say that, but there was a card spoiled recently, Living Twister or whatever, Twister Elemental.
Okay.
The 3-drop green red one.
Yeah.
And it says pick up target tapped land you control.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make much sense because it could be any land. You just tap it and float mana in response. But one of the designers admitted that they added tapped because people weren't understanding it otherwise. So you say the cards tell you what to do, but like.
Wait, what do you mean?
Wait, people weren't understanding.
Yeah. So it's got an activated ability, 1 in a red, discard a land, do 2 damage to something.
Yeah.
And then it's got an activated ability that costs a single green.
Yeah.
Return target tapped land you control to his hand.
Yeah.
And people were misunderstanding that they should pick up cards out of their graveyard, like lands out of their graveyard, because the first ability discards them. So they had to add tapped so that people would like clue in that it meant lands on the battlefield, and to tell them that they could float mana.
Yikes!
I don't know if that's going to help much though, because reading's already impossible as it is.
Big facts.
Yeah, right. So like. Amulet's hard because there's a lot of words you got to read.
Yeah, there are words. That is true, actually. So that's the counterpoint. Okay. Checkmate.
These cards were designed before a time when they tried to add some more sort of understand proofing to the cards.
That's actually a nice phrase. It understand proofing.
It's kind of interesting that these decks are going back to Hive Mind now. Why do you think that is?
I have no idea.
Like, what has changed about the format that makes Hive Mind good again? It's not even like you're only playing 5 packs.
They just try to kill you instantly, right?
Well, I guess you're playing more than 5 packs because you have to count, what's that land? Teleria West.
Yeah, Teleria West.
But
they're doing it so they can just kill you instantly.
Yeah. I feel like you kill most decks, though, instantly when you cast a Primeval Titan, though.
Not always.
Not always, but
there are lots of decks that, like, what if you're... Oh, I figured it out already. Never mind. I just talked to myself. I just had to have a big think about it. I'm telling you, Cam's strategy works.
What's that?
We're a prison.
Okay.
Well, you can't attack.
Yeah.
You're playing Snaring Bridge and stuff game 1, right?
Yeah.
So your Titan doesn't.
Still gets lands, though.
No, I know, but like,
how do you kill them?
Only the 2.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And then you just hive mind them and they die.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
And other decks like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where like, you're gonna be able to cast a Titan, but you're not gonna be able to pop off with it. Like they're just gonna kill it right away.
Yeah.
Like even Jund, like Hive Mind, you just like top deck it. You're like, okay, slam Hive Mind, packed, your turn.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's got to be why, right?
Yeah.
If listeners are listening and I'm wrong, like please just like message and yell at me. But I feel like that's got to be why.
Yeah, I guess it definitely does help in the prison matchup for sure. I'm just wondering.
I think also against like Drakes where they can bounce your guys. Like they can flip a thing in the ice.
Yeah. Okay.
Stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
They have like really obnoxious ways of dealing with like you're not going to win the creature battle necessarily.
Yeah, because realistically you can cast turn 3 Hive Mind, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then
so this gives you
just another turn 3 kill avenue that the deck has.
And against Drakes, it makes it so that if they let's say they play like Thing in the Ice on 2 and then bring back like double Phoenix on turn 3 and tap out to do it, like you just kill them. Mm-hmm. And Hive Mind gives you a way to do that instead of like playing Titan, finding some stuff, like setting up for the turn after. You might be able to just like get them.
Yeah.
Or like you do play the Titan, but then they like bounce it the next turn and hit you to 2. And then what? You're going to replay the Titan and die? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas instead, Hive Mind is like, okay, I'll just play Hive Mind and kill them with this pact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of have cool ways, actually. I think it's neat that, like, theoretically with a pact and negation, a lot of times you can probably get yourself, too, with the Hive Mind. Like, you play your Hive Mind, and then you can, like, play, like, Ancient Stirrings or something and counter it, right? Mm-hmm. Or is it opponent, sorry, with pact? I can't remember if it's an opponent. It's anything, right?
It's counter.
So, yeah, you can get yourself, which is nice. Like,
yeah.
And having 3 Teleria West of tons of,
Yeah. I was just kind of wondering why now. Like, what changed about the format?
Just more linear, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. It can't really hurt going more linear in Modern.
It's like more linear, but also you have to, I think, like, also still respect the fact that Green Black Rock is able to kill a lot of your stuff. They play 4 Assassin's Trophy, right? Mm-hmm. It's actually really annoying for you.
Yeah.
Like, you just go get a forest, sure, but that's really annoying. Mm-hmm. And so I think this has to respect, like, this is just more threats. Like, you have Titan, all the lands, and they can Assassin's Trophy Titan, which they have to, but then you can kill them with Hive Mind. Like, I don't know. There's lots of, like...
It's interesting. I always thought Hive Mind was a super cool card, and when I first started playing Magic, Hive Mind was pretty popular in Modern. And I remember reading it and not understanding why it was good.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't till like 6 months later when I read a pact for the first time and then I understood.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like realizing that too.
Yeah. Has this card ever been used with anything other than packs?
I don't think so. I actually don't know.
I can't think of anything, but...
Mm-hmm. Doesn't seem very good for anything other than killing your opponent immediately.
Yeah, but think of the wacky commander games you could have. It'd be a ton of fun.
I'm sure people do that.
You're right. We have to consider the wacky commander games. You're totally right.
Yeah.
But looking at this top 8, Amulet won the whole thing. 2 copies of Amulet in the top 8, which is just kind of pretty standard for an SCG event, I think. This Esper Control deck, though, that came second. This one's kind of new. We haven't really seen a control deck like this do well in Modern in a while.
Multi-format All-Star Kaya.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of feel like this deck is probably really bad, and the guy just ran hot.
I mean, so like the Nihil Spellbombs and stuff, it looks to me like a similar thing that Fabiano did, right? Like he took Jund, a deck he liked, and he added Spellbombs and some Graveyard Hate because there was a lot of Phoenix and Dredge, and he did well with it. And this just looks like a guy who was playing Blue-White Control and added some Graveyard Hate and did well with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think Control in Modern is so bad in that you can't really, like, Control's good when you can kind of pinpoint the metagame and you tailor your answers towards it. And, like, Modern, you just can't do that.
I mean, this guy's got 3 Esper Charms on his list. He can do whatever he wants, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, is Nihil Spellbomb not pinpointing the meta?
Yeah, 3 Nihil Spellbomb seems to be the trick to playing.
That's my point, though. Like, when you play Modern, like you're playing a control deck, to be successful, you have to properly pinpoint the meta, which is incredibly hard in Modern because regardless if Phoenix is 20% of the metagame, you could just play against all these random decks because it's Modern.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's what Teferi's for.
The thing is, though, the nice thing about Modern Control is like it doesn't really lose to itself.
Yeah, you're going to play Magic every single game.
Yeah.
Which I guess appeals to some people, but I don't know.
I'm serious though. Like it's consistent. Like Esper Control is going to do the same thing every game.
Yeah, I guess you're
Blue-White Control, like the Blue-White like Terminus deck, like it does the same thing every game basically.
You're not. I guess you're not really a dog to anybody.
No, you're not.
You'll have game against every deck, but I don't think you I don't think you're incredibly favored against many decks in the format, or any, really.
This was a point that Patrick Sullivan had like a long time ago. We talked about this tweet. I think Adam brought it up, that like control archetypes in Modern just don't have free wins, really.
Yeah. No, yeah. Cedric was talking about it. Like, that's why he hates them. He's like, where are your free wins? Like, show me where your free wins are. Like, what matchup is literally just a free win for you, and I'll play your deck. You know what I mean? Like, if you just point to a deck and be like, here's its free wins, or like, here's where I get free wins, then like, I'll play that deck. But like, yeah, this, like, we've been saying this forever. Yeah, like, these decks just don't have free wins. But the thing is, like, they don't really lose themselves. Like, they're super consistent just because of the ops and like the mana. And
you give up your free win potential to just be able to play Magic every round.
Yeah.
Which...
You play a deck without free wins in Modern because you probably also like playing hardcore Diablo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is basically playing control in Modern. It's doing like a hardcore D2, like Lords of Chaos speed run, you know, and like you just hear the sound of somebody like, oh, like, you know what I mean? And the dying, you know what I mean? That old video game, like dying sound.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always not really liked control in Modern, and
I mean,
I don't think that's ever going to change.
You're also kind of biased because you play Tron. So like it looks worse than it is to you.
Yeah, I don't know.
All the times that you like would interact with it, it looks like way worse than it is.
I don't know. I just feel like if you're playing Modern, especially now, you should just be linear and get your opponent dead and leverage those free wins rather than just trying to be 48% versus the entire field, you know? Yeah. And honestly, I don't even think this deck is 48% against the entire field. It's probably a little less.
I mean, that's like reasonable advice, but at the same time, if you like playing control, this shows that you can come second at a large tournament by just tuning a bit. So,
yeah, that's true. That's true. Aside from that, 2 Izzet Phoenix decks in the top 8, to the surprise of really no one. They're all playing Crackling Drake, which I like.
Big boy.
What is this card? Set Adrift. That's a new one.
Oh, yeah, that's weird. I like that.
Delve, put target non-land permanent on top
I cast a lot of this. Yeah, I cast a lot of this card in Limited.
Yeah, I remember that card.
It's like just a clean answer to like any permanent, right? Well, not
for a turn,
but yeah.
Cool.
Seems like pretty much every Izzet Phoenix deck now has adopted the Pyromancer Ascension plan. That card's just so good in this deck.
Probably a similar thing to like the Hive Mind, right? It's just a backup plan.
It essentially just, you can churn through your entire deck, right?
It's this exact same, it's funny. Yeah. It's the exact same concept as the Hive Mind deck. It's like these linear decks are like hyper aggressive and linear, but they have 2 strategies to do it. Like that's why they're so powerful, I feel like the Modern decks, right? They're like, they can win in multiple ways. Like they're linear. It's so funny. Maybe they're not linear then at this point, right? It's like they're linear, but they like can win from 2 angles. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we're just, so in Euclidean geometry, there is a notion of parallel lines, linear things that won't intersect. But now each of these quote unquote linear decks has an intersection with a similar, like a sort of plan B linear strategy.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
So we moved to projective geometry,
okay,
where any 2 lines intersect. There's no such thing as parallel.
All right, okay. That's just the point Modern's at. What comes next?
Yeah, I don't know, grad school.
Also a Humans deck in the top 8.
And a friend's.
We haven't seen a Humans deck put up a good result in a while, eh?
No, it was in the last one.
Was it?
Yeah, there's always one that sneaks in.
Yeah.
This deck won't die, and it just won't.
Mm-hmm.
You can't keep humanity down. No, there's always. This list is a bit different though, but Anafenza. Anafenza is a house.
The interesting thing about Humans as an archetype is that it probably, like, once it's good enough, it probably will never die, because maybe it's to identify with their player base, but WotC will continue to print human creature types in every set forever.
Yeah.
So eventually some new tool will crop up, some new whatever will be printed.
They print new merfolk though.
Yeah, but that's like every once in a while, right? Like not every plane has merfolk. When was the last plane that had no humans?
Not Nival.
No. Shadowmoon and Morrowind didn't have any.
Okay, yeah. So like,
but I don't know if that's the last one. Yeah, like a long time
ago, yeah. No, that's part of it, and also like humans is Merfolk. Like, this is humans is the replacement for Merfolk. Like if you were a Merfolk player and you're still playing it, just play humans.
Yeah, just stop, man.
Just stop. Listen,
my grandpa once said that he thought humans evolved from fish and not monkeys. I don't know if he was joking, but this is the fish deck. He was right in Magic.
But yeah, like this deck is the same style and sort of strategy. And I think Cam's right. Like it's probably not going anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
there will always be humans.
Yeah. I like Anafenza a lot.
Yeah, Anafenza is really good right now in the format.
Yeah, it's Phoenix,
Dredge.
Like just a ton of stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's really good. And she's also just hits like a house. Like Anafenza. Like, do you remember what it was like getting attacked by that card in Standard?
Dude, it sucked. It was so big.
Turn 1 Warden, turn 2 Fleece Mane Kitty.
Yeah.
And to turn 3 Anafenza, get out of my game.
Get hit for a bunch.
Get hit for bajillions.
Oh, you tapped out to kill one of them?
Okay, see,
I know you.
Yeah.
Like, the good old days.
Oh, I'll sneak this Warden to the first tree under counter magic. Surprise, it's a 10 tank.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, you killed my Warden in combat? Wingmate rock.
Yeah, like
Cons was so
man,
good.
I'm out of cards. Abzan Charm. Oh, this card might. Oh, like my exile creature spell.
Wait, my
isn't
divination
isn't dead against control. I'll just cast divination at instant speed instead. Like
that was nuts.
Oh, man,
was Abzan Charm the best charm?
Yes.
Yeah, not close.
Yeah, not even a little bit close.
Yeah.
And wait for this. The other ones were nuts.
They were.
You know what I mean? Like, the other ones were insane.
Jeskai Charm saw a bunch of play.
Dude. I played a lot of Jeskai Charm.
Temur and Sultai were.
Temur Charm's the only one who saw basically.
Temur was kind of bad. Sultai was in a control deck for a while.
Sultai Charm was awesome.
Mardu Charm
saw play.
Only minor play.
But that's because Mardu
crazy.
As a color and Temur as a color just didn't see much play.
Yeah. And when Mardu Charm would have had a chance was in Mardu Green, but then they were just playing Abzan Charm and Crackling Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crackling Doom was basically Mardu Charm. Let's call it what it was. Mardu Crackling Doom is just Crackling Charm. Yeah. Yeah. It was. Yeah. Abzan Charm was messed up. Holy smokes.
Man, that whole set was messed up.
Yeah, dude.
It was so great.
Was nuts. But yeah, anyway, yeah. This deck's great. Humans is great. I'm a big fan of it. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, it's had 2 shadow decks, 4-color shadow, Grixis Death Shadow.
Yeah, so one the Jace Vern's Prodigy version and one the more what's it called? Monastery Swiftspear Wild Cattle
like
Zoo, the Zoo version. Yeah. The Jace Vern's Prodigy one, I was hyped to see when I saw this. I actually messaged our roommate Pete because him and I have been trying for a long time to find different ways to put Jace Vern's Prodigy into decks.
Yeah.
In Modern. We think it's like an amazing card, but
another all-star of that Standard format still kicking around.
Yeah, it's an incredible card, but just a little touch slow for Modern.
Yeah.
But what you gonna do?
Yeah, like what's it sort of competing with, right? As like it's sort of like the Thing in the Ice card, right? Like a 2-drop that doesn't do anything, but then has some big impact once you put some work into it. I guess it's not quite as effective as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, like, you just need it to survive one turn, essentially, right? Because in a deck like this, you flip it immediately.
Yeah.
So
it's just, how much do you need the Snapcaster effect? But in this deck, probably a decent amount, so...
Yeah, it lets you like recast your Thought Scours to cast Gourmet Anglers. You can.
That's really what it is like you have 4 Gourmet Angler. Like you're just trying to cast as many Gourmet Anglers as quickly and as possible. Mm-hmm. It's just like casting Tassigers, like back in Standard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Angler is better, but
it's also like there's been versions of Grixis Death Shadow that didn't play Jace, but in this slot played something like 2 Faithless Looting.
Yeah.
I wonder what I guess it's a similar thing, right? It's a bit more card selection, but Jace isn't necessarily card disadvantage. It has some extra upside later.
Mm-hmm.
Not as immediate, more vulnerable to removal. Yeah. I don't know which one would be better.
You win some, you lose some. I don't really know. I am definitely.
Oh, this one's a mythic though. The other one's a common. So
there you go, scoreboard. I don't know. Grixis Death Shadow it's one of those decks. It's been like it's won like 2 Grand Prix within the past couple months. It's been just putting up solid results, at most of the big tournaments. The deck's really good. I think it's another one of those decks, though, that kind of has that thought around it that it's a very complicated deck to play. I've seen a lot of speculation on that and a lot of players talking about, it's not a very easy deck, which maybe kind of...
I mean, yeah, sure. It's probably one of those, I don't know. I feel like it's a deck that if you want to eke out its maximum power, there's a lot of little nuances you need to learn, a lot of like understanding how low you can go in every matchup or like getting reads on your opponent to know how much damage you should do to yourself. But like on the other hand, it seems like you could get 80 to 90% of this deck's power if you just fetch, shock, and play things in attack. And like if that goes wrong, whoops.
But that wraps up that tournament. I think Modern still the same. Hasn't
not much changed.
I don't think Modern's going to change until Horizons comes out.
Yeah, I mean...
When's that? Like a month or two now?
Really, I haven't really seen anything yet from War of the Spark aside from the new Karn, which I think has potential in Modern.
It's just an artifact card.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were talking about there's finally going to be a 2-mana Edict in Modern.
Oh, yeah. That card. I forgot about that.
Which is nice against... I mean, for fair decks to have in the sideboard, if Boggles makes a resurgence or something...
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of these decks that we were just talking about are particularly vulnerable to edicts any more than other types of removal.
No.
But I guess it's a nice option for modern sideboards to have.
Yeah. I mean, Diabolic Edict is like played in Legacy. That card's very good. And this is just better than Diabolic Edict, right? Liliana's Triumph. That's the name of the card.
This card's gonna see play in Modern probably.
Mm-hmm.
I would play it.
I can't imagine it not seeing play in Modern.
It seems insane.
Like rock decks, green black rock decks are already doing well these days.
Yeah,
occasionally.
And now I have a Liliana. I get to tick up, edict you, and get another. I get 2 cards out of your turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just 3-for-1 them.
It seems nuts.
Also, there were a couple announcements this past week, mainly focused around the Mythic Championship in London. They announced that because the viewership of the Mythic Invitational enjoyed the Cardboard Live extension so much, having access to deck lists,
it was hype
every round, that they're going to be implementing that for the Mythic Championship, which means every player will have access to their opponent's deck list before their match begins.
Yeah, and it's most of their opponent's deck list. They said it's going to be, you'll see all the information regarding their main deck, and you will see names of their sideboard cards, but not quantities.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, a pretty minor downgrade in information. I'm not sure how much that actually impacts things. Plus, if you've played enough Modern, like, you can probably look at a sideboard and guess, like, 4 of that, 2 of this, 1 of that.
I mean, this is kind of crazy, right? Like, especially for a format like Modern, where like the whole entire game completely changes if you know what you're playing against. And especially at something like a Pro Tour, the surprise factor like does a lot for players' success throughout a tournament. And you're just not going to have that this time around.
I mean, how much of a surprise factor was there at these Spy vs. Spy Pro Tours and Mythic Championship?
Cheat-a-thon.
Because like there was scouting and stuff, right? So people figured it out eventually.
But they changed how pairings work a couple years ago, right? To combat that.
This. Yeah.
Also, having just like getting people with the 1-ofs is like kind of gone now. I don't know. Well, it's not gone, but like.
Yeah, but like I actually think the games will be a lot more interesting now because you'll see a lot more players will know exactly what to play around, and there'll be little interesting sub games going on. Or like, my opponent have this card? Maybe I don't know how many copies they have, but like, there's a possibility. So now I have to consider this line instead.
Yeah, we sort of saw that at the Mythic Invitational a bit. There were a few plays that commentary noticed, and maybe we've talked about as well, where it was very clearly a decision that they only made because they knew the opponent's deck list. Like against most control decks, if I do this, I could get punished. But I know that they don't have Teferi's Mane or something, so I'm going to tap out on 5.
Yeah.
And so things like this. But I like this decision because, one, it's good for viewership, and viewership is good for the game. The cardboard live cutout, or not cutout, extension is nuts. But also, it's another... So people are sort of not split, everyone disagrees with me, that the mulligan rule is good for fair decks. But this is definitely a nudge in the favor of fair decks. Because, this control deck playing Nihil Spell Bombs. Now you know your opponent's on dredge. And you already have something main that you can mull for, which you would not have hard mulled for previously. So like fair decks with sort of toolbox packages or silver bullet answers built into the main deck, things like are already toolbox decks. They now have much stronger mulligan decisions game one. And like not control decks, combo, like dredge, burn, whatever, like, do you really mulligan differently if you know what you're playing against?
Not necessarily.
Right. So this definitely disproportionately affects fair decks, which I think is good. If you can if there's a way that you can encourage fair decks to be more powerful and more played in Modern without overtly banning combo decks, because people still like that about the format, they like playing those decks, then you could, produce some more reasonable games. And so...
Yeah, I mean, this combined with the mulligan rule, like you mentioned, is actually going to make for a way more interesting discussions over mulligan decisions come this tournament, because you have the advantage of knowing what you're playing against, and now mulling it's not as like game over as when before, where you mull, like the chance of you having a non-game is so much higher. But with this new rule, like anything could happen. I think it'll be really interesting. But.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it, I think. I think.
You think?
I don't know. It's so hard to say with Modern whether it's going to be good or bad. Because I've also seen things on Twitter and stuff that are like, oh, our deck, like, we're just killing people on turn 2 and 3 every game, So...
Dude,
but who knows? Do you trust? Yeah, I mean, I would love to see like an Eldrazi winter style tournament.
Oh
again.
yeah, dude,
that was like unreal hype.
That tournament was awesome to watch.
Yeah, I loved it. Like, isn't that the dream? Like, and then they ban it, sure, but like for that, people act like it was like a bad pro tour, but it's like that's the dream. Like people broke the PT and they showed up, and like if you just didn't show up with that, you got stomped.
Yeah,
that's hype.
Yeah, that was a cool PT. I think it was the follow-up GPs and like local play that people didn't like.
Yeah, they should ban that instantly. But like, no, but I'm saying that people were complaining about the PT too. Like, but
yeah,
that's good. That's great.
It just makes for such a more exciting tournament and a better story overall. We're like, yeah, these players like figured out this interaction before everyone else and just absolutely destroyed everyone.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I love that.
And that's kind of being removed from new sets, right? Because there's all this like target whatever an opponent controls, or like all these like design philosophies that make cards only interact in a very narrow way. And so there's because of these limitations, there's less possibility of finding some weird interaction with some older card.
I don't know what you mean.
What do you mean?
I don't know what you mean by that.
So like old removal spells used to just be like target whatever or any whatever, or like you could target your own stuff, and there's like weird interactions that come up with that. But a lot of cards now force you to target things your opponents control, or force you to use them in some certain way, so they can't necessarily, or it not can't, but it makes it harder for them to have niche interactions with older cards that can sort of innovate eternal formats.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, because the cards are more specific in their rule structure now.
They are.
It's the tap land thing.
Yeah.
Return a tap land to your hand, because it's trying to be sure about design features to help guide newer players as well. And as a result of that, there are less open interaction possibilities.
Yeah, right. Like I remember I've been thinking this for a while in Standard. It was maybe, I forget what it was, but it was Like you can't, certain spells now, like if your opponent casts like a Vraska's Contempt or something and you don't want them to gain the life, like you used to be able to kill your own thing. Or we were watching a streamer once and the opponent tapped out for a Lyra and they had lethal if they attacked and then killed their creature that Lyra blocked, so that there was no lifelink. But all the removal spells now say that your opponent controls. Like it removes these plays. It removes nuance and interactions.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty insightful comment on the design philosophies over there at WotC, Cameron.
Yep.
How'd you get so smart?
Well, I tried to read and I got about 30% of the way through and that was enough.
Yeah.
Is it from all the calculations of complex materials and decisions you do?
Yeah. It's all the projective geometry.
Helps your big thinking.
Man.
That is. I never really. Geez, Pete, I'm dropping the mic over here. I never really thought about that though. Actually, about how big of an impact that could have theoretically on a million different sort of eternal formats, and like you said, just reinvigorating these formats and how they affect it. That's super fascinating from a design perspective on how this single text, this word on the text, can completely change so many outcomes of games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's like minor that it comes up, but I notice it every once in a while in Standard that like someone goes to do something and then they're like, oh, it's an opponent controls. And then they just pass or like.
Yeah. See, that's like cool and interesting from Magic. You know what I'm saying? That's way cooler than doing calculating probabilities or pretending people do, rather. That's actually super interesting.
But yeah, like I think
they should give us a job at design. And then pay us miserable wages, so never mind. we're gonna make more doing the other things we do. Actually,
I don't know. I guess
WotC actually can't pay us enough. Our hourly rate is.
I guess they probably know like what goals they want to achieve with this sort of design, but I personally would enjoy if they went back to like more flexible, older templating that sometimes had confusing interactions because those are the fun things to figure out. But
I agree, and I think it's actually more rewarding, and I think that. One of Magic's staying powers is that it's particularly difficult and alluring because of that. And I think it attracts people who like solving those puzzles and figuring those things out, and they find it rewarding to do those things. Unfortunately, it also attracts people who that makes them feel smart and validated. But no, it's like fun to learn those things and figuring out those puzzles, and the more that they water down sort of the construction of things, then
I
think it gets worse because of exactly what you're talking about. Like the Lyra example is a perfect example.
Or even like Vendilion Click. If they reprinted that, if it had never been printed and they printed it now, it would say target opponent. And you couldn't click yourself, which is like a big part of that card.
Or the fact that when it resolves, then you choose target, and like Vendilion Click just messes with people's brains constantly.
Yeah,
I can't even count, man, how many times I've seen, all right, click, and they're like, yeah, it resolves, and just dump their hand, and I'm like, target me?
Oh yeah.
You could scumlord them too, and just like write down their hand, and then be like, okay, target me.
Yeah, I've heard stories about stuff like that.
It happens.
Probably the motivation for why they're formatting things differently, but at the cost of removing gameplay.
Yeah, but that's hilarious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those things are funny. If you get like mad about that, like
wily dumb fairies.
Yeah, then you got fairy, you got trifled. You know, like what do you want?
You've kind of actually, there's like history in card design and the way things are worded as you can see them try and figure out this issue, right? There was a period of cards, I think around Alara, where almost every trigger said May. Because there was this like, oh, you missed your trigger. It's not a May, like that sort of rebuke that people have. Mm-hmm. So there was a period where to avoid this, in order to try and communicate to people that you can miss triggers, every trigger said May. But then they stopped doing that because it was a bit wordy. And like on Moto, you have to like, if you play with those cards, you have to click no every time or yes every time.
Yeah. Even on Arena, they do it like that.
Yeah, for May triggers. So they got annoying. So they stopped printing the word May on everything and they implemented miss triggers rules. So there's sort of a history of them trying to figure out how to balance gameplay and understanding.
It's not a miss trigger. So it's a May trigger.
Yeah. Because if it says May and your opponent skips it, you can just be like, well, it says May. You clearly picked on to do it. And then they're like, oh, yeah, got me. But
it's not a May.
We got a pretty interesting topic this week with us leaving for Niagara in 1 week's time. to go play some Legacy.
Well, you are. One for side events.
There's a couple of us to play some Legacy. I've come to the problem now where I've only ever played Legacy, I think, 3 times.
Alex realizes that he literally has no idea what he's doing.
So
old Coach Adam's going to get him through this one.
We figured today we'd talk about prepping for a format which you haven't played before, specifically the example being Legacy for me. But if you're thinking about playing a brand new format that you haven't played before and you need to get some cards for it, where could you go?
Well, you could go to wizardtower.com.
Your source for your Magic single needs.
MTG Canada. Yeah, they have free shipping on orders over $15 for singles within Canada. So if you want to get yourself some back to basics, a pretty important card in Legacy right now, some spell pierces. If you don't happen to have them, you can get some foil spell pierces because that's, again, one of the premier cards in Legacy, in my opinion. Yeah. If you want to really splurge, get yourself some Japanese foil brainstorms. I got some of those from Mercadian Masks. Oh, yeah? Holla at your boy.
I got myself those Jace Spellbook ones.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I got some Dazes too, some foil Dazes from back in the day.
Wow. But yeah, wizardtower.com.
I don't play with those ones, though. I just have them at home because I don't want to riffle, because I riffle shuffle my Legacy deck. And I don't want to riffle shuffle my $400 brainstorms. I'll riffle shuffle my dumped hunters or something. That's whatever. But not my sweet foil brainstorms and dazes.
Makes sense. But yeah, so now I have to learn Legacy in 1 week's time. And I don't really know where to start. So Coach Adam, teach me.
Well, I think the first thing is to find somebody who knows what they're talking about. So you're kind of screwed on that front.
I was going to say I came to the right place, but I was like,
well, no, that is our first point. It's watch coverage and streams.
Yeah.
So our topic in general is sort of prepping for a format you haven't played, Legacy in particular for Stelly. And yeah, watch a streamer who's playing the deck that you think you want to play from first person view. That way you're not biased by seeing the opponent's hand, and they usually talk through their decisions. And that's this, finding someone who knows what's going on.
Yeah, you want to find someone who knows what's going on. More importantly, you got to be able to make sure you can root out sort of like BS as well, though. You have to be careful that they're not just biased towards like one deck, right? I watched this Legacy content creator, streamer who was playing Mono Red Prison, and he did really well in this like 8-round or whatever, Legacy challenge event, right? 9 wins, and he's just talking about this is the best deck in the format. It's actually insane. It's like you just ran hotter than the sun. Like Mono Red Prison is not. Like, it's very good. It's a tier 1 deck, but it's not, like, just an unbeatable god tier deck. Like, it loses a lot. And it loses to itself, like, a lot. But you never had that happen. And so you're just ranting about how the deck's just unbelievable because you ran hotter than the sun.
It happened with Mono Red Phoenix in Modern when that guy, like, XO'd and was talking about how nuts it was. And then
I played it, and I was like, I want to...
You just ran hot and didn't realize.
Yeah, I was like literally... What was it you and I were like, this guy cheated?
How did he go 16-0?
Yeah, remember on the drive home, right?
Yeah.
We were like, how did that guy go 16-0? This deck is so bad. Little Benny said the same thing. Yeah. And no one's played it since.
Yeah.
We're like, that guy had to have cheated. Like, and he's talking about how good it is. Like, he just ran. But I'm joking about like cheating. It's just, that's how hot he ran. Like, and it can really warp people's perceptions, especially in formats like Legacy and Modern, where things are so powerful that like, you can have these like really hot runs, and then the deck looks just like a world beater, but actually it's like you just had the hottest run.
Yeah.
Like that Mono Red Phoenix deck's terrible.
True.
But if you run hot, it seems good. But it's actually trash. And so you got to be careful. So that's the first thing is like find someone who knows what they're talking about, but is capable of making reasonable decisions. Like I would seriously consider playing Mono Red Prison.
Yeah.
Like if I went and I am going. I'm contemplating playing it. I'm actually contemplating playing it because I think it's incredibly obnoxious and powerful, but I just think it's so inconsistent. So I don't know. I just don't know if that's the kind of deck I feel like playing.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so when you're new to a format, you want to find somebody who is willing to accept the realities of decks, I guess, and not just be biased towards like a particular strategy. Ever since they banned top, I'm not biased to any particular strategy in Legacy. I don't care. Like I'll play it I'll play any deck in Legacy. I think they're all good. Like they're all fine. I'll play whatever. So it's important to do that.
You had a point here about some of the differences between content produced regarding Standard and Legacy rematchups.
Oh yeah, if you watch a lot of Standard content or read Standard articles about Standard, I feel like people are kind of just like taking a shot at things. Like it's more guesswork and estimations about like, well, I think this matchup will look like this, and like if you read like tournament reports, people don't really seem to have a fair grasp on how matchups go. But if you watch Legacy content, like people it's pretty obvious. Decks have been around for a decade. Everybody knows what matchups will look like. You know what I mean? They might agree and disagree on the numbers, but Legacy comes from a time where we used to have the matchup win percentages on Moto. So yeah, sure, there's been some card changes and meta changes since then, but we essentially sort of know who wins what matchup and how to play for that matchup. And so knowing that, like when you read content and articles about Legacy, you can say like, okay, well, this is what the, Delver versus Lance matchup looks like and like how I need to play it out because this matchup isn't good for me as a Delver deck. And this is what I need to do to beat Punishing Fire. And you know what I mean? And so we kind of know these things. And so you can actually kind of trust sideboard guides a little more, I think. Whereas in Standard articles, it just seems like a guess to me. Like you could sort of sideboard however. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Sideboards change a lot in Standard as people try different things. And then the format kind of ends or new cards get put into it before that can really all get super cemented.
Whereas here, yeah, it's so different. And which is like a different point as well about sort of sideboarding and Modern and Legacy in particular seems so much different than Standard as well, right? Like in Standard, you're just getting rid of like your moment of cravings for some negates. So like straight up just dead cards for cards that are upgrades that just do something in the matchup.
Yeah.
They just do something. Whereas in Modern and Legacy, you're bringing in cards that win the game on the spot. And so you need to sideboard as if you're also trying to beat cards that are going to beat you on the spot, right? So you need to be aware of like going into these formats, like Legacy, you need to think about the cards that are just going to one-shot crumple you, right? Like back to basics, which is why if you play against, like I played against Lands recently at a Legacy event. I didn't bring in back to basics against him because I brought in Rest in Peace instead because I thought he would go for like just recursion, and he did, and it got him. But he brought in 4 Krosan Grip and 2 Cindervines.
Jeez.
Because he was so afraid of back to basics.
Wow.
So,
but rest in peace. The damage is already done.
Yeah. I just choked him. That was my plan was to just, and I brought in surgicals. Like my plan was to just go after all his recursions so that like nothing he did mattered, and it worked because like I figured he'd be prepared for back to basics. But so stuff like that, right? It's like how you have to think about sideboarding.
Yeah.
I still think I should have had back to basics actually in retrospect, just because like maybe I could have snuck it through and just got him. Like. But yeah, it's like a format where you have to play around. You have to know, like, okay, here are the cards that I will automatically lose to that people play in this format. That they're going to bring it in. And I have to accept that I might draw a dead card, which basically down to a mulligan. You know what I mean? So that I don't lose to this card. That is sort of how you have to play Legacy.
Okay. Right.
So that's an important sort of thing. And then the other thing is like, just spending time, as much time as you can, playing some games, like, which is what we're doing after this. Just play on Moto.
Yeah, if you really want to learn a format, and say if it's a smaller format, maybe like some standards or limited, to learn those formats, you want to play every archetype. Because in standard, there's not that many. Limited, you need to be able to draft anything. So you just kind of want to try all of them. But if you're on a time crunch for the other formats, one of the points we're going to talk about is sort of particular play patterns or common play patterns in the format. Those are so particular to each deck's matchup against each other's deck that if you don't have a lot of time, you kind of got to just pick a deck and go with it. Because if you try and switch last minute and you don't know the format, it's going to be way worse for you.
Yeah, like you basically know you're locked for a Delver deck, right?
Yeah.
Because like we can learn to play Storm and like learn how you should sideboard with Storm, and you know what I mean. Like
I'm kind of at the point now where I'm locked on either blue-red Delver or blue-white Delver, and I don't know which one I'm gonna go with.
Yeah. Well, that seems completely reasonable. So,
but yeah, if you've like never played Legacy before and you and you play some practice games with Delver and you think you don't like it, there's not a lot of other decks that you can just switch to in like a day and pick up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also I think like if you try and play a deck like Maverick, you know, like you don't know what your silver bullets are for. You don't know what you're going to get Gaddock and when and what matchup. Like, when are you holding your green sun for something else? Like, fair decks you don't have time to make mistakes, you know? Like, you're not going to go play Death and Taxes. Like, well, Death and Taxes, actually, you could probably just, like, be a complete idiot about it and just do fine. Because you just, like, play a Thalia and people can't play spells and you just kill them. It's like, that is actually another option. It's like, you just play Death and Taxes.
Yeah.
But Death and Taxes is an incredibly tricky deck. Have you played against it at all or with it or watched games with it?
I've seen games
because in Modern it's like trash beyond belief, right? Like I always say that it's the worst deck I've ever registered in a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But in Legacy, it is a force. It's wild. Like there's so many things you can. The deck is so tricky and unique. Like just because Aether Vial gives you a lot of play with Flicker Wisp, with like there's like a lot of stuff with Palace Jailer, Flicker Wisps, like restructuring like what's going on, and then you have port. Like what are you porting on upkeep? What are you trying to keep them off? Like you're just trying to prison them out, right? Like there's just a lot of sort of like combat tricks. It's a Stoneforge Mystic deck, and like when you activate, so like the deck just leaves up a lot of stuff, right? It's like you can have up like your Aether Vial, a Stoneforge, an even Mind Sensor, maybe, like who knows, right?
Yeah.
It's like you get to do 3 things, so people like can't really play around things when you're playing Death and Taxes because there's like so many possible things you could instant speed do as this dumb white creature deck. So that deck's pretty sweet, actually. I'm a big fan of it.
I know you've been a big fan of Death and Taxes. You've talked about it on the podcast before.
I still like it. I think it's like still a phenomenal deck. I think it's a super, super good deck. Mm-hmm. You get the Cataclysm people.
Man, it won PT25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what that card does, right? Cataclysm?
Does it blow up all the lands?
No, it's a 4-mana sorcery, white, like Wrath. But it's each player chooses 1 land, 1 creature, 1 artifact, 1 enchantment.
Oh, Cataclysmic Gearhulk.
Yeah. It's Cataclysmic Gearhulk and sacrifices the rest. So you just like keep your Thalia, just like your Aether Vial and the land. And then you just you keep your like Wasteland or something. Well, you like Cataclysm, you keep your port, and then you play a land afterwards. Yeah. So like, and then you have a Thalia, and they can just never play another spell. It's so funny. Yeah, it's really, the deck's great. But anyway, like, you could play that deck, but you would have to think about all these things while playing live. Like, because if you don't have enough practice, you're just not going to realize how they come up about all these different interactions you can make. So, but and like knowing how the Monarch works is important, and like what decks play Monarch cards in Legacy, which is like actually a real thing.
The Monarch, that's that conspiracy keyword, right?
Yeah.
And what is that?
Their end step, they draw an extra card if they're the Monarch.
Dude, that's nuts.
It is. Creatures insane.
Some creatures ETB make you the Monarch.
Yeah.
What is it? There's 1 Monarch per turn or per at a time, right?
Yeah.
And then
Queen Marchesa sees play and a couple others. Palace Jailer.
If you do combat damage to the Monarch, you become the Monarch.
Sorry,
Okay.
You have to do combat damage.
Okay, so I can't bolt them and become the Monarch?
No.
Bummer.
Yep. So Death and Taxes has Monarch cards. So there's like Dead Guy AL has it. There's a few others. But it's insane. You just draw an extra card every turn, which in Legacy is nuts.
I feel like in most formats, that's nuts.
It's nuts, but in Legacy, like, imagine getting hit with a Thief of Sanity in Legacy. Game's just instantly over, right?
Yeah.
There was a guy who was playing it, right? At the SCG he was like 6-0 at one point he was on coverage.
Really?
Playing blue-black Thief of Sanity in Legacy.
Wow.
If you get hit with that thing in Legacy, like it is over. Just cast an extra Brainstorm. That's nuts. So like just play patterns as well. Like Cam was talking about, those is really important. Like when you fetch in Legacy, like people tend to over fetch or like brainstorm on end step. Like just stuff like this is just so bad.
Yeah, this is sort of the rest is all sort of preparation stuff, figuring out how sideboards work, figuring out what deck you're going to play, etc. But the actual like how to pilot the deck in game, most of that is just learning common interactions. And so, as Adam was saying, and we have some other examples of from some different formats, just some common interactions that come up. Yes, like fetching in Legacy and Modern happens at different times, right? I don't actually know.
Yeah, like in Modern, you just fetch end of turn, right?
Yeah, just shock land,
get a tap land.
Yeah,
but in Legacy, a lot of times you're not as concerned about doing something on their turn. It depends because a lot of times like you'll want to brainstorm on your main phase after you've drawn, so you could just are seeing more cards and considering more options, right? And then you want to fetch after you brainstorm generally if your hand isn't great, and if your hand is great, then don't cast brainstorm because your hand's great. Why are you getting rid of cards? Because your hand's great. So people have like make these mistakes all the time, right? Or just like wastelanding on the draw. Like when like it happened only maybe twice at the SCG, but I like on the play, I'm like, Delver, go. And they're like, yeah, wasteland your Tundra. And I'm like, okay, untap, like flip Delver, attack you for 3, like play fetch land, go.
Yeah.
And they like untap and they're like, okay, fetch, like ponder. I'm like, okay, spell pierce it, untap my turn, like play my land, Stoneforge Mystic, attack you. Go. They're like, okay, play something. Okay, daze it, untap, wasteland you, hit you for 3, activate this Stoneforge, game's over. It's like they put themselves down a land on the draw. Or they just reset the amount, right? It's like I get what they're hoping that they just land screw me.
Yeah.
But like they just lose. If you don't land screw them, you just lose on spot a lot of the times. I mean, that's also because I played a turn 1 Delver, but again, like if you don't have priority, I think it's sort of like turn priority can be an issue.
Or just other common play patterns, things that I wouldn't have thought of that I've heard people mention about Legacy is like don't wasteland when there's spells on this deck against a daze deck.
Oh yeah,
they can just pick up their land with a daze.
Yeah, it's super important. I've seen this happen to people and just get wrecked, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
and it's one of those little things that if someone tells you this, you go, oh, that makes sense, and then you don't make that mistake. But if you hadn't looked into it and didn't know this about the format, you're going to make that mistake. It's going to cost you round 2, and now you're down in a GP. And like,
yeah, you got to be really careful. I got somebody at the SCG doing this where they wastelanded my Tundra, and I was like, yeah, in response, like brainstorm. And they were like, okay, like spell pierce your brainstorm. I was like, Pog, pick up my like Tundra, daze your spell pierce.
Yeah.
Get wrecked.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so these are, again, sort of what, if you're learning a new format and you've locked into a deck, these are sort of things that you should, well, this is really just playing against blue decks, but things from the format that the ways your deck can interact with other cards that like you should just sort of try and pick up on, these sort of commonly known things.
Yeah.
This is something that coverage talks about a lot if you're ever watching tournaments. SCG commentators, I think, do it a bit more. But especially in Modern and Legacy tournaments, every once in a while someone will do something and they'll say, all right, this is the correct time to do this. Sort of the first example I thought of was casting Vendilion Click in your opponent's draw step so that you see more of the resource that they'll have to work with, so you have sort of wider options, which if you were new to Modern and say you're a standard-only player or standard and limited, it's very common that you just do everything with flash on the end of your opponent's turn. That's when you cast your draw spells. That's when you cast Torrential Gearhulk. That's when you flash in Hired Blade if you're playing limited. That's just when you do flash things, right? Because you leave up options unless you want to cast. What?
When you flash in Hired Blade. Damn right.
Yeah.
Cast a lot of that guy.
Or in combat, right? But you just leave your mana open as long as you can, and then you want to untap with a lot of mana, so you do your flashings end of turn.
Yeah.
But in other sort of niche scenarios, you shouldn't do that. You should do it in your opponent's draw step or on their upkeep or whatever. And so if there's sort of a general consensus, a general wisdom that people have figured out of when it's best to do these things, you should learn those. So clicking in draw step is one.
Yeah, so literally ask your friend or whoever it is that's trying to teach you a format, when do I usually cast these?
Yeah.
Obviously there are always exceptions.
Yes.
But what are the normal heuristics for playing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For playing these games.
Yeah,
so
even like you just explained, if you're new to casting Brainstorm, it's helpful to know, usually Brainstorm, if your hand is bad on your main phase before you play a land so you can fetch.
Yeah.
Just having that sort of a guideline can save you from making so many incorrect decisions.
Yeah, and if your hand's like super good, just play your stuff and save your brainstorm for when your hand has gotten worse. And if it isn't getting worse, then like
you're probably winning.
Yeah, right on, dude.
Others,
Yeah.
Other examples that aren't so much phases of the turn, but sort of general timings of the game thing. An example from previous standards was Scarab God. It sort of became common knowledge, and you would sort of often see players either play Scarab God on turn 5 and hope it sticks because it costs 5. That's when you can play it. Or if they weren't going to just slam it on 5 and hope it stuck, they would wait until they had 9 mana so that they could play it, and when it resolved, activate it before it got contempted. So this kind of became this sort of, people knew this was when you cast Scarab God. It was sort of the 2 best times. And so that's things like that are useful to know.
Yeah, there was like a Scarab God sub game of when it was played and how, and like the Scarab God sub game when there was 2 in play and mana open was like unreal. Like people really learned the interactions of like, oh wait, I can't activate mine or he'll activate his. You know, so is this like learning those interactions? Scarab God taught a lot during that, I think, about sort of
and like
who chooses to spend mana first and reacting and priority and all that, right? I think that's really important to learn, but how those actually come into play with particular cards is really important. So make sure you ask, or pay attention to those things if you don't have someone to ask. But if you do, ask them, like, what are the general rules and tricks? And if they can't answer those questions, then look elsewhere for someone to help you. But normally, people who are sort of really familiar with the format and comfortable with the format will be able to answer these questions.
Yeah, another example of timing-based things or general play pattern-based things that aren't just about your cards. If you're playing any deck in current standard and past standard against control, those control decks relied on 4 mana draw spells, either Glimmer of Genius or Chemist's Insight, to really smooth out their draws, set up good turn 5s, and just give them the advantage they need to make the type of flexible choices that made those decks so powerful.
Yeah, I think this is good, especially for last standard too, with blue-white control, because blue-white relied heavily on Glimmer and also settle the wreckage for turn 4.
Yeah.
And there's multiple ways you could punish that turn when they're holding up these spells by trying to force through either certain attacks or a certain like you would make a certain attack and to settle the wreckage to kind of force their hand, but then you were able to resolve like a planeswalker or something.
Yeah, something big afterwards, or
you didn't send everything. Like that's why that deck was so good, because it was able to punish Chemist's and settle so well.
Yeah, or like if you had 3 drops, and one of them was one that was generally considered stronger, you would cast the weaker one on turn 3 because you want to cast the stronger one on 4 to incentivize them to counter it so that they're not Chemist's Inciting efficiently. And so this is an example of understanding how your opponent's cards line up and how your deck can sort of take advantage, common ways that your deck can take advantage of other decks, not just take advantage of its own cards.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are like the small interactions that you'll pick up just through actually playing games, but it's kind of good to have a basic understanding of what cards are important out of each deck in the format, so you can kind of figure these out on.
Well, I would literally go through, if you pick a deck list, to be like, okay, what is this card for, and what am I trying to do with it? Assume those cards are there for a good reason because you don't know any better.
Yeah,
and play that deck list and be like, okay, what am I using this for? And like, what are these for? Like spell pierces are literally there to just tag ponders and brainstorms, right? Like. You don't save them for big fights always, like maybe depending on your hand, but you just tag up advantages actually. And it's something that not enough people do. Like you cast a ponder, I'm spell piercing it every single time. I'm going to fight, you know what I mean? Just because the value is so high. So stuff like that is.
And then just to sort of emphasize the point that this learning a format thing also applies to limited, there are, again, responding to your opponent's deck, there are certain things in this current limited format, say Ravnica Allegiance, I'm sure there's things like this in every format, where the way you sequence your abilities and spells depends on the colors you're playing against. So for instance, if you're playing Adapt creatures against a white deck, you always adapt before combat and then attack so that you don't get summary judgment in combat. But against every other deck, you can attack with everything and then adapt based on how they block. So little things like this, you just recognize, like, if my opponent has access to this card, I need to sequence slightly differently because it's just a common play pattern that everyone sort of figured out by now. you adapt and then attack against white. Everything else you attack and then adapt based on blocks.
Mm-hmm.
But if you didn't know that going into this format, then white decks will wreck you or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so there's lots of stuff that you can go over about just figuring. Yeah, ask someone who plays a lot about just common play patterns. Watch some games, look for common play patterns. But that's really time consuming. You have to get on the old YouTubes and hit the times 4 or something maybe.
Yeah.
Double the speed and just go through and just.
Yeah, if you don't have a lot of time to play a bunch of the format to sort of learn these things the hard way by losing to them, I think the next best way is to, watch a bunch of coverage, watch people playing the formats, and then when they do something you didn't expect them to, ask why and figure out why.
Yeah, go into Twitch chat, just start asking too. Why not? But ask friends, ask people or whatever. Just, hey, what's going on in this format? Like, what do I do?
Well, boys, I think I'm ready to learn some Legacy.
Yeah, easy 9-0 coming up from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Legacy's super rewarding though. You'll see why, like all these things, like when we're playing.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. If you want to support the show, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/DWC Podcast. We're also on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1, Facebook at the Disorganized Wizard Club Podcast. Be on the lookout for upcoming DWC streams. I know we're all going to miss this one because this episode's going to come out after, but we're going to stream a little bit of Legacy today and maybe a couple times more leading up to Niagara next week. And however you listen to the show, whether it's Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, any podcast app, leave a review, share the podcast with your friends. Everything helps bring this thing to new listeners and keep it growing. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you all next week.
Bye, guys.